Hi everyone, this is Sam with Wine News in 5. Before I get to global news, a reminder that Jancis, Alder Yarrow, and I will be in California next week for two events: a panel discussion in Napa at CIA Copia, and a dinner in San Francisco at the Morris. On November 16th, Jancis, Julia, Richard, Tara, and I will all be in London for a walk-around tasting of 25 champagnes and 25 English sparkling wines. We still have a handful of tickets left to all of these events, so if you're interested, please do head to our website, find 25th anniversary events in the green bar at the top of the page, and get your tickets. In terms of global news, today I'll discuss Germany's smallest vintage in 15 years, an initiative to recognize fortified wine production as intangible cultural heritage under UNESCO, a $99 million wine Ponzi scheme, PacifiCorp to pay Oregon wineries $125 million in damages, and finally, a new Sonoma entry on the list of wineries with Regenerative Organic Certification. First up, Germany's smallest vintage in 15 years. On October 21st, Wines of Germany announced that the German Wine Institute, DWI, has received final harvest estimates from Germany's 13 wine-growing regions. When totaled, only 7.3 million hectoliters of wine are expected to have been produced in 2025. This is 7% lower than harvest amounts in 2024 and 16% lower than the 10-year average. If the estimates are correct, 2025 is the smallest vintage for Germany since 2010. The largest drop in yield was seen in Rheinhessen, where smaller berry size, low must yields, and heavy rainfall in mid-September resulted in an estimated crop reduction of 23%. Pfalz, Baden, Württemberg, Nahe, Rheingau, and Hessische Bergstraße also saw double-digit declines. In contrast, the regions of Sachsen, Ahr, Mosel, Franken are all expected to have yields slightly above the 10-year average. Quality is expected to be very good across regions. Next, an initiative to recognize fortified wine production as intangible cultural heritage under UNESCO. Thank you to Louise Hurin for bringing this to my attention. In January of this year, the Concours Mondial de Bruxelles, CMB, an international wine competition which takes an active interest in the cultural importance of wine, the consortias of Marsala and Sherry, and the United Winemaking Agricultural Cooperative of Samos, which is one of the oldest cooperative wineries in Greece, all signed a memorandum of understanding stating that they'd collaborate to secure UNESCO ICH status for fortified wine production. During the Sweet and Fortified Wine session at the CMB last month, which took place from September 17th to 19th, France's Institut Régional de la Sommelier, a wine school, and 12 French Vin du Natural appellations signed the memorandum. All parties are expected to contribute to the documents that will be submitted to UNESCO in spring of 2026. If this contingent of fortified wine producers are successful in securing ICH status, it's going to serve as a tool to promote the history and cultural significance of all fortified wine at a time that the category is struggling due to consumers turning away from sweet and high alcohol wines. More than 180 countries currently recognize UNESCO's 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. Countries whose crafts, oral traditions, performance arts, rituals, or social customs are documented often create days of recognition, festivals, or fairs. On to a $99 million wine fraud case. On October 7th in New York, two British men, Stephen Burton and James Wellesley, also known as Andrew Fuller, pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy. The two conducted a $99 million fraud in which they posed as executives of London and Hong Kong registered Bordeaux cellars and told investors that their money would provide high-interest loans to wealthy wine collectors who were willing to use their cellars as collateral for quick cash. Lenders were told they'd see regular interest payments, and in the case of a borrower defaulting on a loan, that borrower's cellar would be sold to pay off the loan. Burton and Wellesley claimed to have an inventory of 25,000 bottles backing investor loans. In reality, they had fewer than 300 bottles. They used the $99 million collected for personal expenses and to pay interest payments from 2017 to 2019. When the duo stopped being able to pay interest payments, the scheme collapsed. Now, Setting aside for a second that this was complete and utter fraud that was in no way backed by wealthy individuals with wine collections, I, who am an ardent wine lover, would never recommend investing in anything backed by wine as collateral. The best performing investment grade wine, Domaine de la Romanée Conti, has performed at or around the same rate as the S&P 500 for the last decade. That's pretty decent, but that wine is one of one. If you're asking me, any investment in wine should be for drinking pleasure. Next, PacifiCorp to pay Oregon wineries $125 million in damages. If you're a longtime news listener, you may remember this case from January 2024, but seeing as that was nearly 2 years ago, allow me to recap. In 2020, wildfires on the west coast of the United States cost the wine industry $3.7 billion. Some of that damage was in Washington and California, but most of it was in Oregon. It was later found that the majority of Oregon's wildfires were caused by downed Pacific power lines. Pacific Power, owned by PacifiCorp, had failed to turn off these power lines despite severe high wind advisories. It was later found that Pacific Power had been negligent in clearing away brush and branches around their power lines. The icing on the cake was that once fires started, the company was found to have sent internal messages acknowledging that they were the cause of the fires. They then deleted those messages. In June 2024, 93 wineries in Oregon's Willamette Valley filed a lawsuit against PacifiCorp for $100 million in damages. On October 21st, they were awarded $125 million in settlement. Finally, congratulations to Ramsgate for Regenerative Organic Certification. On October 20th, Ramsgate Winery in Sonoma, section of Carneros AVA in California, announced that they'd achieved Regenerative Organic Certification for their 28 acres, 11 hectares of estate vineyard. Regenerative Organic Certification, otherwise known as ROC, is the most comprehensive sustainability certification available. Using organic certification as a baseline and then building on requirements for animal welfare, social fairness, and improving soil health, ROC is available for food, textiles, and body care products globally. While reading about Ramsgate, I realized that I haven't released an updated list of ROC wineries since January 2024. And since then, at least 8 wineries have successfully certified, so I'm going to include a full list of producers in the transcript of this video. That's all for this episode of the Wine News. If you enjoy this newscast and you'd like to see it continue, please become a member of jancisrobinson.com. And if you have breaking news in your area, please email me at news@jancisrobinson.com. Thanks.